Hey everyone! So, just a year ago, the big story was that Google was a sleeping giant, totally about to get crushed by the AI revolution. Well, today, that giant is wide awake and it is on one heck of a comeback tour. Let's break down how Alphabet completely flipped the script.
Let's just start with a number that is, well, it's staggering. $3.84 trillion. That's where Alphabet's market cap is projected to be by the end of 2025. I mean, that puts them right on the doorstep of the super exclusive $4 trillion club, a place where only titans like Apple and Nvidia hang out.
And this really captures the incredible reversal we're talking about. Back in 2023, 2024, the fear was real. Everyone thought Google search was a classic innovator's dilemma story. The big, successful company that's too slow to adapt and gets wiped out. Fast forward to late 2025, and the narrative has completely changed. The market now sees a totally different reality. Alphabet is a dominant, full-stack AI powerhouse.
So, how in the world did this happen? Well, that's what we're going to break down. We'll start with the comeback itself. Then we're going to dive into the three core pillars that made it all possible: the supercharged brain, the secret muscle, and the money machine. And then we'll wrap up with the market's final verdict.
First up, the comeback. Alphabet stock is up nearly 70% just this year. Now, this isn't just random market hype. We're talking about a complete reevaluation of its raw power in the AI race. They've gone from being seen as the laggard to, well, the leader of the pack.
Okay, so let's get into the first pillar of this turnaround, the supercharged brain. We're talking about Gemini 3.0, Alphabet's AI model that has just completely rewritten the rules of the game. So what's the secret sauce here? It's a technology called parallel reasoning. Okay, think of it like this. Instead of a detective following just one clue, which could easily lead to a dead end, Gemini is like a whole team of detectives, exploring 10 different clues all at the same time. It cross-checks everything, throws out all the bad leads, and only then gives you the final answer. And that answer is way, way more accurate.
And the proof is in the pudding. I mean, look at this. When you put Gemini 3.0 Pro in a head-to-head showdown with its biggest rival, GPT 5.1, the numbers are just crystal clear. For really advanced reasoning, it's ahead. But look at complex math. It's scoring over 23%, while its competitor is basically at 1%. That's not just a little better, that's a total breakthrough.
So, Alphabet has basically built the most powerful AI brain on Earth. But let's be real, what good is a genius brain if you don't have the muscle to run it, and run it cheaply at a truly massive global scale? And that brings us right to pillar number 2, the secret muscle. This is Alphabet's hidden weapon, the thing almost nobody was paying attention to, their own custom-built AI chips. They're called Tensor Processing Units, or TPUs, and the latest generation is named Ironwood.
Here's the best way to think about it. Almost everyone else in the AI race has to buy their engines from one place, Nvidia, and they have to pay the Nvidia tax. But Google? Google has been quietly building its own engine in the garage, and this Ironwood engine isn't just as powerful, it's perfectly tuned to work with its Gemini brain. That gives them a monster advantage on cost and scale.
And this move is just a strategic masterstroke. We're now hearing reports that Meta, one of the biggest AI spenders on the planet, wants to use Google's chips. That is a huge deal. It's a massive stamp of approval on Google's tech, and it tells you the whole industry is desperate for another option besides Nvidia. This could open up a brand new, massive revenue stream for Alphabet. Okay, so an elite brain? Check. Elite muscle? Check. Sounds pretty great, right? But is any of this actually making money? Well, this is where the story gets even crazier. The latest financial results are, to put it mildly, insane. Which brings us to pillar 3, the money machine. Let's look at how all this amazing tech is turning into record-breaking profits and just explosive growth, especially over in their cloud business. Get a load of this number, $102.3 billion. That's how much revenue Alphabet pulled in the third quarter of 2025 alone. That is the first time in the company's entire history that they have ever crossed the $100 billion mark in a single quarter. Just wow. But here's where it gets really interesting. Where is that growth coming from? Well, Google Cloud grew by a massive 34% compared to last year. That is just blowing its biggest rival, Amazon Web Services, out of the water. It means Google is actively stealing serious market share in the all-important AI infrastructure war. And here's the real kicker. Even though they're spending record amounts of money on AI, their profitability is actually going up. Net income jumped 33%, and the profits from Google Cloud exploded by 85%.
You know that old argument that AI costs would crush their margins? Yeah, that theory is officially dead. The complete opposite is happening.
So you've got cutting-edge tech, you've got record profits, they look totally unstoppable. But what about the big risks? What do regulators think? And what about a legendary investor like Warren Buffett? What's his take on all this?
And that brings us to our final section, the market's verdict. And it seems like all three of these pillars have come together to convince investors that Alphabet has built what they call an unbreachable economic moat. And you can't get a bigger signal than this. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway recently doubled its stake in the company. What that's telling you is that the world's most famous value investor doesn't see all this AI spending as a cost. No, he sees it as an investment in a durable, long-term competitive advantage. He sees them digging that moat deeper.
And what about all those regulatory fears? You know, the worst-case scenario everyone was worried about, that the government would force them to break up the company, that's now seen as super unlikely. The reality is probably going to be what they call behavioral remedies. For example, they might have to stop paying Apple $20 billion a year to be the default search engine. And the funny thing is, that could actually end up being a good thing for their profits.
So when you put it all together, the journey has just been absolutely incredible. From a low point back in 2022, through all that doubt and fear, to a record-breaking quarter and launching a superior AI model in 2025, it's just a stunning turnaround in only a couple of years.
Which leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. By providing the fundamental intelligence with Gemini and the core infrastructure with their Ironwood chips, is Alphabet no longer just competing in the AI race, but are they actually becoming the racetrack itself? That's the $4 trillion question, and it seems like the market is answering with a huge yes. Thanks for joining me.